Angela Harris. I am a first grade teacher at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School, the African American Immersion School, and I'm also chairwoman of the Black Educators Caucus. Why did I choose to help the community in the city of Milwaukee? So, as a long term Milwaukee resident, someone who was born and raised here in the 53206 zip code, I believe that it is important to give back to a community that gave so much to me. I also am a firm believer that you have to be the change that you want to see in your communities and in your neighborhoods. So, like Alice Walker, the author, reminds us, we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And so, I know that in order to see change in my community, I have to be the person that participates in making that change happen. Have I ever experienced racism or violence in my community growing up, and how does that make me feel? So, yes, I have experienced both violence as well as racism in the community. Like I mentioned, I grew up in the 53206 zip code during the 80s, which was the height of the crack epidemic, where we saw a lot of our fathers and uncles, myself included, removed from our homes and our communities and pushed into mass incarceration. It was not unusual for there to be gun violence in my community, physical violence, as well as over policing. And so, that was part of my experience in my childhood growing up. Eventually, my mom moved us out of that community and moved us to Brown Deer, which was a very different experience. And unfortunately, I had the unique experience of not attending Milwaukee public schools. I actually attended suburban schools from the time I was in third grade until I graduated from high school. And so, I really experienced a lot of racism in those environments. I've had teachers single me out as the only black child in the classroom to speak about black experiences or perhaps something that they saw on the news that was happening in my community. I've had classmates talk about my hair and my skin color, and the way that I spoke. Even going back into my own community, I was often ridiculed for talking white and acting white because I did go to a predominantly white school. I even had to deal with blatant racism of being called the N word, being called a colored girl, and being referred to as a crack baby. Addressing racism is important to me because I know that unless we address racism in a real systemic and intentional way, we are doomed to repeat the issues of the past, and we see that happening presently. Addressing racism means that we are breaking the cycles of our past and moving towards a better future. It is important that we have a society that isn't just non-racist, but it is anti-racist, meaning that they're actually doing the work to becoming anti-racist, doing that self-reflection work, the work that I call heart work, and really taking the time to get to know how we all perpetuate and contribute to systems of racism and white supremacy. What is one thing that I do every day to help make Milwaukee a better place? So, one thing that I do to make Milwaukee a better place is my role as an educator. This provides me with an opportunity to reach our next generation of activists, abolitionists, our next group of change agents. So, the knowledge and the wisdom that I impart upon them will hopefully grow into it will help hopefully grow in the future, and you will see them taking the things that they learned even in first grade through their entire school career, and eventually taking that into their lives as well. Another thing that I do to make Milwaukee a better place, as the chairwoman of the Black Educators Caucus, last year, after the incident happened with George Floyd, we started this thing called We Chalk Your Walks, where we will go to the homes of locally elected officials with a set of demands. particularly related to racial justice and racial liberation. But we just really wanted to provide a space for families to engage in dialogue around all of the racial unrest that have been happening, all of the things that have been happening here in our city, and really provide children with an opportunity to engage in activism and to show them what that actually looks like. Um, we engage families and communities in a dialogue about issues related to policing in our communities, creating equitable anti-racist schools, and ultimately the power of the people. We create, like I said, an opportunity for parents to engage in dialogue with their children around these issues, and then it's usually followed up by a mini protest where we have the young people lead the chants, and we end up in front of a local elected official's house, because ultimately the real point is to show children that the power lies at the feet of the people, and we have the power to vote these elected officials in, as well as to vote them out. And so I believe that as young people, you can help stop racism and violence in Milwaukee, by number one, understanding that you are the future, and there's power in that. There is positionality in the fact that you are the ones that are going to take over all of this from folks like myself. And so it's so important for me personally, as a community activist, as an educator, to really center the voices of students, because you all are the future. And this is really the world that I'm trying to create, is the world that you're going to have to live in. So it's so important that you're at the center of everything, all the decisions that are being made. And so, like I said, it's so important for community activists like myself to know that in you, we're planting the seeds for the future. And so, I would definitely encourage you all to do what Dr. Bettina Love calls freedom dreaming, and really dream about the type of society that you want to have and what it could potentially look like and what it's going to take to get there. And once you begin to visualize it in your mind and then put it down on paper and really begin to brainstorm and organize around those things that you want your future to look like. I think it just goes back to what I said earlier, that we have to be the change that we want to see in our classrooms, in our schools, in our community, and ultimately in our world. And I just want to say thank you all so much for allowing me to participate in this, and have a good one.